Hello and welcome to my second posting about avoidant personality disorder. Well, hell. What have I done? I began to speak. Or type anyway, and now I cannot seem to stop. People with avoidant personalities do not take many chances to express themselves, so it builds up. And at the moment I seem to be feeling brave. Well, brave enough to post things anonymously and to speak through a cartoon character anyway. Even so, I still have a horrible fear that my family and coworkers will connect this with me. The great fear of people with avoidant personalities is that people will know they have avoidant personalities, as if it isn't obvious. And I already know that when my fear returns again, I will be upset that I revealed so much about myself. But still I am driven now. I feel a little like a real person today. I hope Miss Big Cool Planet will not mind my mentioning her again. She said that she could not explain how she came to have an avoidant personality, that you would have to see her whole life to understand. I know that feeling, but I think I can try to explain my own case. And for some reason, I've wanted to try and explain it for a long, long time. I hope you will want to understand and be patient with me. And remember, this is my case. I can speak for no one else. First, there's nature versus nurture. Are we born the way we are, or are we taught to be the way we are? Research shows it is about 50-50. Half of personality can be explained by biology. The other half, by the way we are raised. My family has many anxious, depressed, shy and addicted people. It is safe to say these things run in the family. My natural nervousness and depression and shyness made it easy for me to develop my personality problems. I was set up for avoidant personality, but it was not inevitable. But I want to focus on how I was raised and taught. First, I was not abused physically or sexually. A couple of people outside my family tried to molest me, but I was lucky to be able to see what was happening, and no one ever actually touched me. And like I said in my last post, there is nothing unusual about my body or mannerisms, and I am a very intelligent person. There is nothing about me that might naturally cause me to feel ashamed. I was a very shy and socially awkward child. One thing that both of my parents had in common was their frustration with this part of me. They were often angry with me for being awkward, and asked me to stop it. As if I could. As if it were a choice. My being awkward drew me a great deal of criticism as a child. I can't describe my father in 3 words: frightened, angry and rigid. I can't describe my mother in 3 words too: frightened, dependent and faceless. It is safe to say they both have personality disorders as well. My father is so scared of change that he demands that the whole world obey his rules. The fear becomes his need for control. Absolute control over what family members think and feel. And although he was so very angry, he could not tolerate any feelings, especially anger, from his children. We were supposed to be compliant and to always think as he did, no matter how ridiculous. I remember at 11 years old my father angrily chewing me out, red-faced, eyes bulging, nose to nose with me. Then he scolded me for, in his words, looking like a whipped pup. But I was a whipped pup. He would also do things like chew me out, then reach to my face and form a smile out of my mouth with his fingers. How intrusive. So fear and anger were not permitted emotions from me. I should say that my father's rages were frequent and unpredictable. There was no telling what might be the next thing that set him off, sometimes within seconds. My father was also very embarrassed by my childish behavior. And despite being a child, I was too. But how else does a child know to act but childish? Playing in his presence or even showing affection would make him so uncomfortable. Acting according to the expected role was very important too. I grew up in the touchy-feely express yourself 1970s. But for my father, any expression of anything feminine was forbidden. And having and talking about emotions was definitely woman stuff to my father. Although I am straight and have never had a same-sex lover at all, to this day my father suspects that I am gay. especially because I have for the past 5 years had no lovers but 1 or 2 brief flings. I think my father really wanted me to come out of the womb as a junior executive, wearing a suit, and plotting my next masculine step up the corporate ladder. I learned early that my father was completely emotionally unavailable and that it was best to avoid interacting with him at all costs. My mother is very compliant and dependent. She always strives to say exactly what it is my father wants to hear, what she is supposed to say. But my father is an angry misogynist. He hates and fears women. And I can understand. I know his mother. So what he wants is for my mother to be wrong so he can angrily correct her. It is a game they play. She tries to guess what she should be at any given moment, and he finds a way to be offended with her. That is why I call her faceless. She has no identity but has different roles she puts on. She was never genuinely herself. I grew up trying to relate to a woman who had no self, but just acted out a number of rigid and poorly fitting roles. And this was her fear. That someone would criticize her for not being the right person, for not playing the right role. I think she is very avoidant and that she cannot let even her children see that she is a real person. I can understand this. I cannot stand the idea of my parents truly knowing me. So again, she was a parent who insisted that I play roles, but never express who I actually am. What was more important was to keep everything looking happy and healthy from the outside, even if we were all sick at heart, and at each other's throats. Yes, we had to be the happy family from the outside. I remember in 7th grade, I sought the attention and laughter of my schoolmates by writing the most horrible and gruesome sentences for English homework. When the school counselor called my mother, she was mortified. She was angry. I was chewed out for making someone think there was something wrong. I did not dare to speak it, but I thought to myself, "Mother, there is something wrong." Me. I'm so sick with fear and sadness. I just beat up my only friend because I thought he was mocking me. Mother, the other day I put a gun in my mouth but was too scared to pull the trigger. I screamed silently in my mind. The entire incident was ignored after I was told not to be attention-seeking. Attention-seeking. That was my parents' explanation of all my misbehaviors. And I had many misbehaviors. I was told again and again you were just being attention-seeking. When what I really wanted was to become invisible and disappear from even other people's memories. I heard that so often, attention-seeking. I learned that to draw attention to oneself was not only painful, but wrong. I tried to learn to creep on tiptoes in the house so I could not be heard. I silently listened to the voices of others through the walls. I learned to keep myself silent. These were the coping skills I tried to learn. But most of times, I was explosive, vulgar, resentful and ugly. Very, very ugly. I was a horrible child to raise. At these times I wanted nothing more than to destroy my family's rules, to shake off all of the masks we were supposed to wear, even if... No. Especially if I had to destroy my family and myself to do it. But of course, I only helped my family cling to their roles and masks even more. Another thing, I understand the power of positive thinking. Thinking positively helps us reach our goals and to feel happy. But my mother took this to a very unhealthy extreme. Her way of trying to change me was to imagine who she wished I were and then act as if I were that person. She is always surprised and puzzled by me, because I do not match who she believes that I am. Not long ago, she mentioned my incredibly troubled, angry teen years. She told me, "That's all gone. I don't even think of that as you. It never really happened." Once again, I was silent, but screamed in my head because she was trying to change me through her fantasy and to amputate part of my life. A horrible, ugly part. But it is mine. It is my history. It made me who I am. I should also add that my mother's style of punishment was to save a great deal of resentment and then explode verbally. This almost always included expressions of how disgusting I was physically and of contempt. My mother, being very passive-aggressive, often lost no chance to suggest that I was soiled, or smelly, or unclean somehow. And didn't I say there were other children? Yes, my sister. We had no relationship, really, other than sharing a house and mutual contempt. She was the good child, the compliant child. The one who made no problems, usually made no problems. Who usually made no problems bigger than the ones I made. She suffered as deeply as I did. But we were no help to each other, and would have not even known where to start having a loving relationship. Not until we were adults, anyway. And what about other kids? Well, it should surprise no one that I was set upon like a wounded sheep in a wolf pack. Children can be cruel and horrible, especially when there is a weak one around. And I was weak. And I had no real defenses. I was teased, tormented and rejected. And when I came home after being beaten, my parents would demand to know what I had done to deserve the beating. And they would punish me for having caused a problem. For making people think there was a problem in our home. So I learned there was no emotion that I could be allowed other than happiness. And I sure as hell didn't feel happy. And I learned that I was bad because I wanted other people's attention. And I learned that I should show no problems to anyone, because people would judge my family. And I learned that the problems I had were all my fault, including the beatings I took from other children. I think that one thread that runs through all of this is rejection of my identity and emotions. I learned that my true identity was inconvenient and unnecessary. This is a subtle thing. It is not like being beaten, but is a denial of my whole existence, of my ability to be an individual, of my right to exist. It seems so small, but years and years and years of this denial of my identity made me, well, let's be honest. It made me fucking crazy. Suicidal crazy. Mental hospital crazy. Electroconvulsive shock therapy crazy. Do you remember the 70s TV series called Roots? It followed an African-American family, from their years in slavery to the present. The young African, Kunta Kinte, was being whipped, because he rejected his new name of Toby. The slaver would shout Toby, and whip Kunta Kinte, who would shout back Kunta Kinte. This is how dearly we hold our identities. Most people don't realize it, because no one has tried to steal their identities. There is something so sinister and terrifying about someone trying to reject or replace your identity. It is your very soul. As I review this, I see that I have failed. I think Miss Big Cool Planet is right. I cannot explain how I came to be what I am. The things I have said do not really convey the horrible desperation of my childhood. But emotional abuse is hard to understand if you have never lived it. The living hell of physical and sexual abuse seems easier to understand somehow. It is so obvious why it hurts so badly. But what made me was emotional abuse, a slow, relentless degradation of my very soul. That is depressing. Where do I go from here? I can't stop on such a crappy note. Well, I can say that despite all that has happened, I am me. I exist. And despite how twisted up and ugly I feel, I still have my identity. Mine. All mine. And you cannot strip away my soul. And I know that at least part of my ugliness is only in my mind, that my thinking is clouded. And like the poet Charles Bukowski, some of my ugliness, my brokenness, is part of my beauty. And like I said in my last post, I know I will return to pain, hiding and isolation. But today I am awake. I am courageous. Today I can feel again. I thank you for watching my video. It was very, very long and I still feel so much is bottled up. Please leave me a comment. It would mean a lot to me.